Riverdale sometimes deals with disturbing and problematic topics. We provided a list of content warnings in the episode description. Hello and welcome to Dead Ends. I'm Emily.
I'm Brenton.
And we have 2 new episodes for Riverdale for you.
Mm-hmm.
For Riverdale? Of Riverdale.
For Riverdale, by Riverdale.
Of Riverdale.
And welcome to 2025, everybody.
Yes, hello, welcome. So far, it's off to a start.
It's off to a start. Both a little sick.
We were both a little sick. I got a nice post-Christmas cold. Thank you, family. And then they're all denying. They're all teachers. They brought me germs. I stayed in my house. It was not from me. I did not collect this on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gave it to Brenton because I'm really generous like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was going to happen anyway.
It was going to happen anyway.
We're not the type that run away from each other's sicknesses.
Well, it's because I always get sick first.
Oh,
You don't
true.
run away from the sickness.
That's
I don't know
actually
if
true.
it was flipped what I would do. I don't think I'd run away. Actually,
that's
that's not
fair.
true. There was a couple times you got sick and I did not.
Mm.
I remember one time you got a cold and I didn't. And I said, I have
This
an
is the
immune
first ti-
system. This has
Exactly,
never
yeah.
happened to me before. I have a very mediocre immune system at best, and don't let it hear me saying that, but it is true. The whole food allergies, I think it's just really tired all the time. You know what I mean? Like, it's got a lot going on, and it thinks the wrong things are attacking it, and it's struggled.
It's a little confused. I understand.
It's confused, but it's fine. It's working.
Mm-hmm.
Minor cold. But
Yeah,
if you,
it's extremely minor.
it's a really
just
minor
annoying.
cold. It was just annoying. And if you hear us sniffling, I'm so sorry. One of my personal pet peeves is sniffling into microphones. I'm going to try really hard not to do it. And I've told Brenton not to do it because it annoys me. So if you see me staring daggers at him, just know that he has now cut the sniffle that I have stared at him for, if you're watching the video.
That's right. I'll try and move away from the microphone to sniffle.
Thank you. I just there's something about that noise that drives me nuts. And at the same time, it also drives me nuts when I do it. So I'm very acutely aware.
Right, they're just like, ugh.
It just bothers me.
Yeah.
But you get what you get because this is a free podcast and we are we are not professional.
If it was paid, then we'd have 2 versions, one for the sniffles. The
One
sniffles
we-
is the Patreon one.
When we edit out the sniffles on.
Find it on our Patreon. You still get ads.
You want an edited version?
Right.
Ads? What ads?
I'm saying if we were professional.
Oh.
You still get ads on both the Patreon feed. The Patreon just cuts out the sniffles.
We just actually edit the,
Yeah.
the Patreon one.
People, exactly. Just get the raw file on YouTube. People hate our podcast.
I feel like it should be the inverse. Like most people would pay for the raw file, because you want the unedited, the uncut. You know what I mean?
This
That's
is the exact conversation we were having. Well, not that I brought up yesterday. I'm like, they don't make unrated versions of DVDs anymore, do they?
because he was like, you know how on unrated comedies they'd be like, and you'll see boobs. Do you
Yeah.
remember that? And I said, no, that wasn't very exciting to me.
Just remember there'd be commercials, and it's just now unrated. It's just oh, you might see boobs on this one for a scene.
I thought it just meant they might say a different cuss word.
Yeah, and they might do that too.
But what do I know?
Yeah.
Well, we're
Shall
on
we-
Riverdale. You ready?
Let's do it. Let's get into this week's cast.
Yes.
I'll put up my notes and then I'll pull up the slides. All right. So, all right, we're ready to go now. So we'll start out. This is a McCoy-centric cast run through, and we're starting with, of course, Josie of Josie and the Pussycats. This is played by Ashley Murray. And Ashley Murray, I know I did a big sniffle right off the bat. I'm so sorry.
It just made me giggle.
That was a big one. We'll be seeing Ashley Murray in both Riverdale and Katie Keene as
I'm
Josie.
really excited for Katie Keene.
Yeah,
I didn't
interested to
watch
see what
it.
it is. Yeah, because it just seems like it's a little bit more low key. Of here they are, just living in New York. Trying to make it in New York. So that should be fun, Her first big role was in The Following, which is a Fox Kevin Bacon crime thriller in 2014, I think. Also, she was on the main cast of the CW spinoff of the Nancy Drew series. The spinoff was called Tom Swift, but was canceled after 1 season in 2022. That's like a big blind spot for me, like all those Nancy Drew CW stuff that came on after this. I don't know if it's still running. I'll have to double check that in a sec. But they used...
Oh, I don't know. No, okay. My phone's not over here.
Yeah, fair enough.
I was looking for it. I was like, can't help you.
But they used her voice for all the vocal parts on Riverdale, but she said like that she doesn't want to pursue a career in singing. At least in the article I found, it was like, quote, that she like felt that she wouldn't succeed at it, which I understand. Like singing's like hard, but also it seemed like she was like, I'm pretty hard on myself about my singing. So, you know, we get it. I completely get it. That's a really vulnerable thing to try and do. And then...
As Archie teaches us.
Let me tell you, it's all about it this week. She was also in the CGI Rugrats reboot in 2021 as a minor character. And I don't like this character design, so I have to show you.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
There's something about it. I don't like the look of the CGI Rugrats anyway.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that feels not great about that design.
Oh, 100%. No, it
feels racist.
It feels like a problem.
Yeah. Right. Well. Anyways, let's go to her mother now, Mayor McCoy, aka Sierra McCoy, played by Robin Givens. So, Robin Givens was, if we were born about like 10 years earlier, we probably would have known who this is. Like, big deal, late 80s, early 90s, but has like just a huge body of work. Like she's been around for forever. So it's like one of those things when you turn over a rock and you're like, oh my God, this person is like extreme, like doing so much stuff, and was like top of the list for like a while there. Just of course before like my cultural like awareness and before I was even born, really. Anyways, so she started in like 1986. Like her first one was landing a guest spot on the Cosby Show, and Cosby supposedly became her mentor and like encouraged her to drop out of school and like try acting, and then if it didn't work out was going to pay for her school afterwards. Now, asterisks on all that, because we know now Cosby is a huge goddamn problem and was horrible during this time, but there's nothing at least related to Robin Givens that seems to be any of that, at least not publicly. But I think that's just an interesting story that it's like back when Bill Cosby was like the centerpiece of like media and like Hollywood, and especially like
in comedy, like the comedy sitcom kind of,
and especially like the Black community within entertainment. So it is interesting. But her first big role was on the sitcom Head of Class, which I hadn't heard about at all. This went from 1986 to 1991.
This will be a recurring theme in this episode, is Brenton discovering television he has not heard of.
Yes. And we'll have to get to one a little later that I'm more excited about. But then was also in a big comedy in 1992 as an Eddie Murphy movie. She was the second lead in it, called Boomerang, which has a ridiculous cast. So I'm going to segue over to that real quick, too. We're talking about Halle Berry, David Alan Grier, Martin Lawrence, Grace Jones, Eartha Kitt, Chris Rock, like just absolutely stacked. Like looking at this list. The actual movie itself, I don't know about. It kind of seems like it's Eddie Murphy is like a like a misogynistic like player essentially, but then gets a boss played by her who's the exact same version of him but a woman, and it's like, oh wow, maybe I shouldn't be such a like shitty guy because this woman's shitty.
She's his ghost of Christmas present.
Yeah, but like if she was like the same as him, so I don't know about that. But she has also directed episodes of Riverdale, so we'll see some of those. Modern Dynasty, and then also episodes of Nancy Drew. And for Emily's mom, episodes of Elsbeth.
My mother loves Elsbeth.
Yeah.
I've never watched it, but my mother recommends it. So if you have the same taste as a woman who loves mysteries and teaches first grade, you got your show.
That's right.
I don't necessarily know if those have anything to... I mean, the mystery aspect, I assume, has to do with it, but... Teachers, like she's got a wholesome edge to her. My mom does not like very dark things.
No.
Her mystery shows are not gruesome, for the most part.
Yeah, it seems like because it's... I think it's on Paramount or something, but it gives the vibe to me of like a CBS sort of procedural.
She loved the show Bones. She tried to read the books, and she's like, it absolutely was well written and freaked me out. So, just for a good line there for those of you that want to watch that.
Right. And then as for Robin Givens, outspoken against like domestic violence, because I'll spare you all the gory details, but had dated and married Mike Tyson briefly in the late 80s, abusive relationship, dragged her through the dirt. And she was very public about like how awful he was to her even back then. And of course got just like dragged through the headlines. So if you want to read more on that, I'll, do that on your own time sort of thing. I'll save you there. But hats off to her, essentially. Like, what a absolutely horrible situation. And fuck you, Mike Tyson. So there you go. All right. Talking about the dog under your seat?
No, do you smell that?
No, that's my stuffy nose, I think. Did he fart?
He farted and it's so bad.
Well, living in bliss over here. We'll get to now Miles McCoy. Oh, I forgot to mention both for Sierra and Miles that I don't have a comic character associated with. I had a hard time finding anything related to their comic counterparts, if anything. So it doesn't seem like Josie's parents are a big characters at all in the Archie comics that really come up. So I don't know if they're kind of made up, but at least it seems like Miles is... And same with Josie, actually. Like, her last name has gone through just a couple different things. Like, it's McCoy in, like, the film and the TV series now, but it'd been, like, Jones and a couple other variations in the comics. So.
Any relation to Jughead?
Huh. I don't know. Interesting. I didn't see anything related about that on the wiki.
You know what I mean, though? Just because I'm like, oh, it's the same name.
Right.
Last name.
Could be. So anyways, that's why I don't have pictures for both of them. Couldn't find much.
Okay.
But Miles is played by Reese Alexander, who we will see again in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina as Thomas Walker, aka Reverend Walker, but was also in the Seth Rogen, James Franco movie, The Interview, 2014, about them going to North Korea. I never saw it, but I know it got like, I remember it was a big deal at the time, had a bunch of controversy.
You didn't watch it?
No.
Oh, I watched it with Clay at your apartment. So when Brenton graduated the year before me, as a year younger, and he lived, we went to school in Santa Barbara, and my senior year I moved downtown, and he lived downtown because he was no longer in Isla Vista and worked and all that. And if you know Santa Barbara, you understand all this, and if you don't, I'm sorry. That's just information.
Essentially moved out of the college town down to the regular town.
Yeah, and there's a nice bus that took you right to the school. It was great. But anyway, so he had a roommate named Clay, and I rented a room in a house that I never stayed in. I was always at their apartment. So much so that Clay made me a key. But anyway, because he lost his, so he made me one when he made his extra. But anyway, so Clay worked retail while Brenton worked like a 9 to 5. And because I was still in college, like some days was at school from like 8 to 12, and some days I didn't go. Like it was all over the place. So I spent a lot of afternoons with Clay, and Clay and his coworkers, when they got off their shift, sometimes would go out and drink. So then he'd come home like tipsy or whatever in the middle of the afternoon, which made sense. Like his work schedule, it made sense. That wasn't like anything. But so I'd be sitting there like doing homework, and Clay would come home, and one time he came home and he wanted to watch this movie. And I was like, as long as it's not Coraline, because Clay always wanted to watch Coraline and I was too scared. And so I watched The Interview, and I watched it. I was like, I watched it at your apartment, but I watched it with
funny.
Clay.
Yeah, nope, not there. Never saw this. I don't remember either of you being like, this is the best movie ever.
I don't remember it being good.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I don't have any memories at all of it, besides like a couple like picture images, I feel.
Yeah. I think the longest lasting reputation of this was the controversy where it got moved out a few weeks, and then also happened around the same time as Sony got hacked, and there's a bunch of leaks about their like upcoming movie slates and like internal emails about how like Sony Pictures worked and stuff like that. So,
oh yeah, I remember all that.
Yeah. Wild times. So that's more interesting than the actual movie.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not like, some of their films I think are funny, and some of them they aren't, and that one I have no memory of, really.
Yeah.
I just for some reason thought you were there when we watched it, but I don't think so. I think it was just the middle of the afternoon, so.
No. And also
you're probably at work, Clay and I are watching The Interview.
Right? Also, not much of a reason to go back to it anyway, now that we all know that James Franco's a problem, so.
Yeah.
But anyways, the only movies that you should go back to that James Franco is in is the Spider-Man movies.
Is he in The Night Before?
No.
Okay, I love that one.
Because that's Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah.
I really thought that movie was quite fun when I saw it.
Yeah, that is a fun movie.
I made you rewatch it a couple times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we watched it a few times. You didn't make me. I was, yeah.
No, I did.
Forced me.
I did. I said, you have to watch this or else.
Or else.
Or else I don't really have any good threats.
It was the unknown that gave me pause.
Oh, no.
All right, so now we're on to Sheriff/Tom Keller, played by Martin Cummins.
Who looks the most like his character.
Absolutely. But in the comics, as you can see, he's decorated there. That is because he is Colonel Thomas Keller. Martin Cummins was known, so this is where Emily was alluding to earlier that I'm like, TV shows I didn't know about, was known for being Ames White in the Dark Angel television series. Now, this was a series in 2000. It was the series where Jessica Alba had her breakthrough role. It was a James Cameron show. And it was like this dystopian thing where it's Jessica Alba is this like super soldier in dystopian 2019 near future thing. And like, but she escapes from the like super soldier program thing. And then she's trying to evade the people that like made her while also trying to find her other brothers and sisters that were made in this super soldier program. A couple of actual fun facts as I was looking at it. So James Cameron, huge, Titanic, Avatar, Terminator, like huge director. This
you know
is
what
his
I'm noticing?
television
All his
debut.
movies are really long. I feel like Avatar's really long.
Yes. Titanic is
It's really long.
I don't remember Terminator 2 being all that long. So maybe just his recent ones. And this is like this was his television debut and the only television show that came out under this like partnership production company, but it was promoted a bunch because it's James Cameron. And just to give you a glimpse of how like TV metrics have changed. So 2000, there's like no streaming or any of that. And then not a lot of also different, like the cable revolution hadn't happened in that sense of like the like AMC, HBO, like those sort of things, like really holding up a lot of space. So the premiere got like 17 million viewers. And in comparison to like Riverdale and Pretty Little Liars, which we previously covered, those peak at like 2 to 3 million, and they're successes. So I just thought that was interesting. And the intervening like 10 to 17 years between these shows, like how much it changes with all these smaller cable.
When you have like almost an
channels.
oversaturation of the market.
Exactly. And how people view television changes with like TiVo and on demand and then streaming, just how much that gets diluted. And then I think the only thing that comes close to even that 17 million was like Walking Dead was pulling those types of numbers. But anyways, he was also in Poltergeist: The Legacy, which is a Showtime TV series that ran for 3 years that I didn't know about, also in the 90s. But I think a lot of people probably know him from, outside of this, is When Calls the Heart, which is a Hallmark Western TV series that has been running for 12 seasons since 2014. And he's in 103 of the 119 episodes. So he's a huge part of it. But just something I have no idea about. I think my mom mentioned it once. And it's probably just like that a lot of people, there's probably a big amount of people that watch it because it's this long-running successf's TV show.
I Googled the synopsis yesterday, or just like, I Googled it, and like the synopsis that came up was wild. Like, so I was like, okay, like,
because it's
like woman moves to a small town, I think to be a teacher. I don't remember. And like, there was like so much drama just in like that first paragraph that I was like, oh, okay. And it's obviously like a romantic show.
Right.
So it's like horses,
When Calls the Heart. Yeah.
Horses and romance, and I think like a city gal in the country kind of vibe. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm not 100% on that. If you watch When Comes the Heart, you can please correct me.
Please, yeah.
And please tell us about it.
We would love to hear more about it. And also, if anybody watched Dark Angel during that time, I'd love to hear about that too. All right. So on to our final person.
Or watched it after that time. I don't know how many of our listeners watched it during that time. I don't know how many of them were conscious.
If anybody has seen Dark Angel, let me know about it. I'm very curious. But on to our final person, Polly Cooper, played by Tara Scovby. So in the Archie comics, Polly is a successful television reporter in San Francisco. I don't know about
So
successful.
kind of like her mom.
In San Francisco, and on occasion visits her family in Riverdale. But Tiara started as a child actress, Canadian. She's from Canada, so like Canadian television things. And her first substantial role was at 10 in Painkiller Jane. But I, funnily enough, played Elizabeth Berkley in Lifetime's The Unauthorized Saved by the Bell story. I don't know if you remember when that came out. No. It was like kind of like a big thing that it's like, ooh, they're like dramatizing like the story behind making of Saved by the Bell and all the problems there. And then a couple for you was in the 7th season of Once Upon a Time, and in 2022's Bring It On, Cheer or Die.
As a Bring It On girly, I've only watched through Bring It On All or Nothing, which has Hayden Panettiere and Solange Knowles. Mm-hmm. You've only watched the first Bring It On.
Exactly. I've only seen one, and that was recent.
Yeah, I showed it to him recently.
Although I'd seen like bits and pieces of it on like cable when I was younger.
Yeah, and they cut a lot of it for cable.
Yeah, I could see why.
It's not. And I think the longer time goes on, the more they have to cut for cable. But yeah. And then I definitely stopped watching Once Upon a Time in like 2014, 2015. So probably 2014. So I have no idea when season 7 was, but
relatively recent. Right?
Yeah, I think the show ended in 2019. So I assume it's towards that era. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what her vibe was.
Well, we know what, or at least her vibe here is.
Mm-hmm. For now.
Yeah. All right, that is our cast for this week. Let's transition to the episode. All right, so this week we're starting with Chapter 6, Faster Pussycats Kill Kill, which is an exploitation movie from the late 60s.
That involves go-go dancers.
Yes. That accidentally kill someone and then hold other people hostage and go on a wild road trip. I don't know. Sounds interesting. When I saw the I think I've seen like the poster and stuff. I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. People at least sharing like the poster, like the screen caps of it. So I just don't know much about it otherwise. Have not seen it. Okay. In Chapter 6. We see a flashback of little Polly and Betty. Betty asks Polly to spend the night with her, but Polly says their mom says she can't and turns her nightlight on for her. Back in the present, Jughead comes over to the Cooper household for breakfast. Alice asks about Betty being interested in investigating Jason Blossom and if it was his doing. Jughead asks to go to the bathroom and Alice escorts him. While they're away, Betty looks at Alice's purse and takes pictures of her checkbook. Archie digs through his toy chest and finds a wolf mask that scares him. It cuts to him trying out for the talent show. He chickens out and runs off stage. Afterwards, he talks to Val about performing alone and wants her to sing with him. She says no, she's a pussycat first. Betty finds that her mom cut a check to the Sisters of Quiet Mercy, and her and Jughead find that it's a home for troubled youth. Betty and Jughead discuss going to find Polly with Val and Archie. Veronica and Kevin show up, and Veronica says that she talked to Kevin, who's running the talent show / variety show, to give Archie a slot. Veronica offers to be his partner and sing with him.
And she inserts herself between Archie and Val sitting on the bench. Like, she just slides in and is like, I've solved your problem.
Right.
I just think it's really, like, the blocking on that is done really well. Veronica does that really well, where she just, like, shows up where Archie is and, like, puts herself, like, she does what, she's always there with what he needs.
And is like, I'm here now.
Exactly.
Excuse me, but without doing that.
But she's not being rude to Val, necessarily. Like, she's not
just
actively
subtly
being rude.
Yeah.
She's not being, like, move over, I'm going to sit next to him. She's just not, like, paying attention. Val doesn't really respond to it either, which I think is kind of odd.
I'm just kind of like, oh, I'll scoot over.
Yeah, and she doesn't even just like look, like she doesn't give her like a dirty look or anything. At least I didn't notice. Like she was just like, okay.
Well, they're not anything yet. It's just like, probably just like, well, okay, that was a little weird.
Yeah, or she's just like, okay.
We're just singing partners at the moment anyway. The Pussycats practice, and Josie is lasting out at the band. She's really stressed about performing at the variety show. Val says she doesn't have to deal with this crap working with Archie. Josie is upset and gives her an ultimatum, and Val quits, and quits the band, and Josie waves her goodbye. Hermione starts her job at Andrew's construction. She says he has only enough payroll in the bank only enough money in the bank for 3 more weeks of payroll, but he doesn't want to fire anyone. He wants to win the bid for the construction going on at the place where the drive-in used to be, and wants to woo the mayor over dinner. He asks Hermione to be his co-host for it, and she's like, you know what? Let's have dinner at my place. She touches his chest, and she grabs his hand. We cut to Veronica coming up to bring her mom flowers and finds them making out. Fred comes into Archie's room. He bought tickets for all the guys at work to come see him play. And then also tells him, he's like, I might be having maybe a thing with Hermione Lodge. And Archie's like, that's cool.
I don't care, Dad.
Oh, good for you, Dad. Josie vents to her mom about Val leaving the Pussycats. Her mom says Val's disposable. We also find out her dad is a big-time jazz artist, and he's coming into town to see Josie and the Pussycats play. Mom says, you got to get a new cat who's skinny and beautiful. And don't forget our branding. And so essentially to make sure she's not white. And don't let me down.
And not more pretty or beautiful than you.
That's right. Hermione comes home and Veronica asks if she's going to leave her dad and that she saw him with Fred. Hermione's like, oh, I'm not sure about that, but I apologize. And like, I know it must be confusing for you. What can I do to help? And Veronica says nothing. She literally says, nothing you can do. Archie and Val practice. Veronica comes in annoyed. And Archie's like, oh, it's okay. Like, you were just doing me a favor. Val's back. Yeah, it's all good. And Veronica's like, what the fuck? Calls him a Ginger Judas. Love it. And tells him about Fred and Hermione. Val goes to leave, and Archie's like, no, it's okay. You could stay here. It sounds like our parents are like, happy together. My parents are like separated, and your dad's like in jail. And Veronica's like, what the fuck? And leaves.
It's the wildest statement one has ever heard.
Because Veronica even gives him an out. Like, he's what, Archie? And Archie's like, in jail.
Incarcerated.
Locked up. He's into clink. Veronica comes in.
Which means his relationship is over?
Exactly. Veronica comes into the Pussycats practice and is like, your search is over. And then we get a cut to her and the Pussycats all walking together down the hall, and Veronica's got the Pussycat ears now. Jughead and Betty go to the Sisters of Quiet Mercy. Betty gets taken to Polly out in the garden, and they reunite and embrace. Polly has a big baby bump and confirms it's Jason's baby. Polly says their parents told her Betty didn't want to come see her, and they locked her up because they couldn't control her. Jason's parents forced him to break up with her, and when she told him about the baby, he was so happy, and they planned to run away on July 4th. She went to leave that morning, but her parents already knew about it, and there was people from the Sisters of Quiet Mercy there that took her away. And then she asks how Jason is and wants to send him a message. And Betty's like, and then goes to tell him about Jason. But Polly figures this out before Betty can. And as Polly breaks down, a sister comes over to Betty and tells her to come with her. The Pussycats go to practice, but Veronica is distracted on her phone. Her and Josie argue over their shitty dads, and Veronica breaks down, and Josie's like, I'm sorry. Val and Archie practice. He goes to riff, and she's like, what the hell? We got to be on the same page. No solos. And he's like, what's going on with you? And she talks about how she's always been part of the Pussycats, and they work together at a record store together. And so it, just how bad it feels not being part of the band. Betty's stuck in the Sisters of Quiet Mercy office. When Alice shows up, she says the sisters notify her because she pays them good money and escorts Betty and Jughead out. They find Polly in the hallway, and she screams at her mom for not telling her about Jason and keeping her cage, and orderlies drag her away. Fred, Hermione, Archie, and the McCoys, including Josie's dad and Josie, have dinner. He's surprised Veronica joined the Pussycats and talks shit about the Pussycats without Val, and then talks down to everybody at the table. He's so nice. Betty gets grilled by her parents. She asks if Hal stole Sheriff Keller's case files. He denies it, and she asks if he killed Jason. And then Alice cackles in the corner, is like, him? You think he has the stomach for that? I wish I killed Jason. You're sounding crazy, just like your sister. And Betty denies that Polly is, and then Hal says, oh, she is. Did you really believe her story? And Betty's like, well, I don't believe you. And Alice is like, well, you don't have to believe us. We're your parents. It's a good encapsulation, I think, of the entire episode.
Mm-hmm.
Fred gives his presentation. Miles talks shit on Fred and calls him a gentrifier. He might be right. I don't know. Mayor says,
to be fair, Fred doesn't own the area.
Oh, that's true.
Fred is just trying to do the bid to do the construction, and he employs local people.
Mm-hmm. Hermione, really.
Hermione's the gentrifier.
Mm-hmm. Mayor says,
the mayor who permitted this.
Exactly.
And knows all the details.
Mayor says, I think it was refreshing. I would like to award you the contract. Unfortunately, the buyer is already in the process of contracting with someone else, and they'll need a board override to be able to change up the contract.
How does she know that?
And Fred's like, oh, okay.
Also, why let him present?
Why would the mayor still be involved
whole
in this
dinner
at
party
this point?
we'll discuss later, but I'm just like, I have so many thoughts.
At Pops, Veronica and Josie vent about their fathers. Veronica wants things to go back to the way things were when he gets out. Josie's like, well, maybe you should ask your mom for like her side of the story of like essentially what happened to him going away and their relationship. Archie's worried about bombing at the talent show, and Fred talks him up, and Archie has no idea who Bob Dylan is. Hermione asks Veronica for her signature on a motion awarding the contract to Fred. When her dad was arrested, Veronica was added to the company and so has the power to do this. Veronica wants her to stop seeing Fred if she signs it. Hermione's like, no. So Veronica's like, okay, then no. Hermione then forges Veronica's signature when Veronica leaves the room. Val practices and Archie says he can't wait to sing with her, but you know what? You got to play with the Pussycats tonight. And tells her that Josie's dad is in town, and Val's like, that's why she's been acting so weird. And then Archie says he'll be okay alone. Jughead climbs up to Betty's second-story window. Betty vents about her parents being wild and worried that she's just like them. Jughead says we're not our parents and kisses her. Betty then remembers Polly talking about the car Jason stashed for them to escape, and Betty wants to track it down to confirm her story. At the variety show, Val talks to Josie backstage about rejoining the Pussycats, to which we get the line, I suppose there's always room for one more kitty in my litter box.
Obsessed. I wish I wrote it myself.
Val asks for more agency in the band, and they agree. The Pussycats perform I Feel Love, a personal favorite of mine. We also see...
Because that's why she says, like, oh, like, the mom's like, oh, your dad doesn't like pop music. And she's like, it's not even pop music this time. Because it's I Feel Love is technically dance music.
Exactly. It's disco. Yeah.
I just thought
Miles sucks.
Miles sucks.
I hate you, Miles. We agree. Wait. We agree. What am I talking about? We do agree. Pussycats. We also see Betty and Jughead finding the car. They find clothes belonging to Jason in the trunk, including his Letterman jacket. And what's this? Drugs. We see someone watching them search the car. Back at the show, Miles leaves in the middle of the set as Josie struggles to keep composure, but finishes the song. They get a standing ovation, and Val tells Archie that he's going to kill it. Veronica walks over and apologizes to Archie, and he apologizes back. Veronica asks if he wants company out there, and he's like, yes, but I need to do this on my own. He goes on stage with his guitar and sees the football players wearing the wolf masks in his mind's eye, but gets strength from Veronica and Fred, and kills his acoustic set and gets a standing ovation. Jughead and Betty run to find Sheriff Keller and show him photos of the car and go to take him to the car. After the show, Archie finds Val and they kiss. Veronica finds Hermione and Fred. Fred says he was awarded the contract and it's thanks to his lucky charm and points to Hermione. Josie cries in the bathroom while her mom comforts her. The police go to find the car, but when they get there, it's on fire. Jughead and Betty go to the Sisters of Quiet Mercy and find Polly's room empty and her window broken, and there's blood on it. The end.
Okay. I have thoughts. I finally figured out a way to kind of like thread this one together because it's kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
And Jughead does it for us in the episode, but it's like not necessarily like the easiest in my opinion. But I was thinking about, because he brings up monsters a lot. Like it starts and ends with this concept of monsters. And so I was like, what are the monsters? And are the monsters real or are they fake? And are the monsters internal or external? And I think that's the place I want to play with. But before we do that, I want to talk about Betty because this is really important to me. So in this episode, when they go meet up with Sheriff
Keller.
Thank you. I wanted to say Sheriff McCoy because
I poisoned us.
Sheriff Keller is at the variety show that his son has set up. And Betty and Jughead come to him in the hallway and then he goes with them. But Betty pauses and looks up at the speaker, and it's when Archie is playing guitar. And she looks at the speaker and then she turns and she goes with them. And I love that because to me, that is Betty making a choice that she's like, this is my friend Archie. I love Archie. For a long time, I was basically obsessed with Archie and I would have like gone in there and said, you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't have missed this. I wouldn't have been searching for Polly during Archie's performance before. But the Betty that we have now, she's like, this is what's important to me. Also, Betty and Jughead both missed their friend's performance, which is kind of like...
That's true.
Did Archie even invite them? I don't know. You know what I mean? But
we'd assume so.
I'm like, this, like, Polly is obviously significantly more important than Archie playing his guitar in
they
Betty's
weren't doing
world.
anything before then.
But they didn't know they were going to be doing that. But I really like the idea that Betty is like, I'm not obsessing over Archie anymore. I am off doing my Nancy Drew shit with Jughead, and I am enjoying my life.
Yeah.
And even when Jughead kisses her, she's then like, oh, I had a memory, like when he kisses her, which I think you could read as like, oh, she's not that interested in him. Like she's thinking about other things. But to me, it's like, oh, she cleared her head. And so then like your brain can finally catch up.
Right.
And so she's not so wrapped up in like being obsessed with him in an unhealthy way that she's able to have like clear thoughts. And that he immediately jumps on board with her with that.
Right.
Like he's not like, I mean, like he makes like a little joke, you know, or whatever, but he's not like, oh, like, how dare you? Like he doesn't get mean about it. And I think that's like, it shows like a really healthy relationship building that's not like obsessive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think is really important for her character, because I think she in the comic books might be more of written as like this love sick, obsessed, like almost toxic, like girl next door who's just like, but he's mine and I deserve him, and like kind of energy. And that they didn't do that with Betty, I think is really important.
Yeah. My read on the comics is like she's the put upon one, the one that's ignored. And like, so like when it's the type of that he says something, she jumps to it and then gets like burned by it. And that's part of the comedy of like, oh, like I just like did all these things and this stupid guy didn't even think of anything or didn't even think about all the effort I put in. So yeah.
Exactly. Like I really like that for her. I like that it decenters Archie.
Yes.
I think that's like a really important thing that happens in the show. It's like, sure, it's in the Archieverse, but it's not like an Archie show. It's a show about like these four kind of like, it's an ensemble cast, but like our four main kind of friends.
Right. And while Archie is still part of this is like center of a lot of things in the high school and community, he's not necessarily the center of the show.
Yes. He is the point on another love triangle.
Always.
He's always the point on a love triangle.
Always, always.
And I'm like, really?
Him?
Not that I got anything against him, but you know, like, couldn't we be doing something else?
Right. And I talked at least in previous episodes how I think Archie is pretty interesting character in this early season. I don't think this episode is particularly interesting about him though. Of just like getting over his fear of doing things alone on the stage. I think that's interesting, but I don't know. I don't think it kind of expects where it's going to do. Like he figures out that he just needs to rely on himself.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the mask in a minute, but before we do that, I want to talk about Val, like in terms of this love triangle. I am very disappointed with the way Val's character is written and portrayed in the show, because Val is a means to an end for Josie and Archie's plot. Val's decision to go back with the Pussycats is Archie's. Archie tells her to go back to being a pussycat.
Right.
Val does not make that decision herself.
Because she's going to go out with him anyway.
Yes. Val does not make that herself. And when she goes back, and it's a way to show that Josie was stressed. Like Val is simply a plot device for these two characters.
Yeah.
And like to show that this isn't Josie's normal, and also that Josie has a really tumultuous relationship with her father that impacts all of her interpersonal relationships and how she performs, because she does not feel like she's good enough. Yeah. Even though everyone in the town loves her and they're headlining the variety show and they do every event in town.
There's not an event where the Pussycats are not performing.
Even the father used to say that way. He's like, Miles says that, oh, like if you get rid of Val, it's a problem because Val's the heart and soul of the group. And like Val's the only one that's like got real talent, or it's something like that, where it's just like, you're like, what the fuck? Like, so I am really disappointed that they don't give Val had more agency and character in every episode up until this one. And then I feel like Val's kind of just being like sidelined as a plot device. Yeah. And then Archie kisses her.
Yeah. It's not about her. Well, and it's
which is once again fine, but it doesn't, you don't feel invested in Val anymore.
And it almost would have been more interesting to follow that person that's kind of like in between things.
Yeah. And she doesn't get to make her own choice.
No.
Everyone is making choices for Val. And saying that it's the choice she wants.
Yeah, that's 100% right.
And if that's then like, if we were going to follow Val longer, and that's kind of like what Val's plot is Val being like, no, I have to make my own decision. Sure, like if this is a multi-episode arc or something. But right now it feels very blah. And then the next episode, I don't think we get like really anything on it.
Yeah, my memory is that there's not much on Val.
Yeah. Like we're not digging into this deeper.
Yeah.
Okay, so then to Archie. Archie's plot in this episode is about him going through his toy chest, and then he sees this bear wolf mask. So, and then in every single time he looks out at the audience and he sees his football friends who are bullying him, they are wearing that mask. And so my question is, did Archie and those boys bully people in those masks? Is that like some sort of initiation or hazing for the football team. I can't remember. I don't know why this mask is important. They don't explain it in this episode, and I'm really hoping it comes up again in the future.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it's that, if it's like a personification of like guilt he's felt about like being mean to other people or making fun of other people for being vulnerable. Or if it's just like something he's afraid of. But in which case, then why does he own it?
Right. Yeah. And then he's like, because it seems like it's touching a nerve, like for him to like see the mask.
Yeah, he's afraid. It triggers like the little kid vulnerability, I'm scared feeling.
Yeah.
And it's specifically in his toy chest, which I think is interesting.
That it would be, you would almost think that it was like from when he was little.
Yeah, like did someone bully him with it, or did he bully someone with it? Did he scare someone with it?
Yeah, but that's not like really how it.
They don't portray that at all in the episode.
No.
So I have a lot of questions about this mask.
This mask, yeah. On the what am I trying? On the like fandom wiki it's like it could be a reference to the comics that because Reggie pranked Archie with the wolf mask one time.
Oh, okay, I accept that.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's kind of funny to how it seems like it has a lot of meaning in this episode, but it doesn't.
Yes, so that's kind of, I think, like the internal monster, like Archie's internal monster and his stage fright. I think he's kind of the only one in the episode that really has like an internal monster. Everyone else's monsters are external.
Yes. Josie actually does too.
But it's because of what her father says to her. Right. So the monster is still external. It's then how she reacts to it. Same with Veronica.
That's true. Right. And we get more on Veronica, at least on the next episode.
Yes.
But you're right, for Josie, it is like how she overcomes the monster that is her father.
Or necessarily and also, doesn't. She doesn't overcome the monster that's her father.
I meant that's like how does she live with, I guess.
Exactly.
How does that impact her?
How does it impact her?
And same with her mom too, because it's like, remember your branding. This is so important.
High expectations of her as well. It's just different.
Yes, she's actually supportive.
It's business minded versus the music aspect, and it's like the business aspect is in my head easier for Josie to improve on because it's very easy to be like, okay, we found another like person to do this, and like the logistics of it are easier. But like with something creative, it's very vulnerable, as Archie presents to us, and you either have talent or you don't is kind of like how people feel. And of course, we know you can grow talent and nurture it. And when you first start something, you're not necessarily going to be good at it and all of that. But Josie feels like she has to be perfect at this because of her father.
Yeah, because he's successful, but also
and he does
always
real music. He looks down on the type of music she does.
And is also not around. So there's a void there for her to get that sort of recognition.
All the real monsters in this episode to me are parents. It's Miles, it's Hiram and Hermione, and then it's the Coopers.
Yes.
So the Lodges, the Coopers, and the McCoys.
The Coopers might be the top.
Oh, yeah. I think Hermione necessarily is kind of in a strange situation. Hermione literally is like, let me help you with this dinner party, Fred, where you're going to present to Mayor McCoy, who's then going to talk to the anonymous buyer that is actually me, but I'm not going to tell you. And my husband. And then she's going to drop this bomb that they need 2/3 to overwrite the thing. So is Mayor McCoy working with Hiram or is she working with Hermione?
It would have been so much more fun. And this is just this is personal because of the type of shows and things I like. Of you get the political stakes thriller almost from it. It's just like, what is the scenes of what is Hermione telling Mayor McCoy before these? What is the conversation afterwards to like rearrange these things? Like, I think that's so much more interesting than that kind of like being backgrounded.
Yes, yeah. And so it's like, who knows what? So Hermione and Mayor McCoy know about the same amount of information, we presume. Fred literally thinks that there's some anonymous person. Hermione's helping him. Like, why would Mayor McCoy agree to go to a dinner at Hermione's house when she knows Hermione is the other person who needs to sign off?
Right. Why? What is the play?
Why is Mr. McCoy there? Why is Miles even there? And also,
what is she saying to her husband about this?
Exactly. What does he know? And why does his opinion matter at all?
Yeah.
And then why are Archie and Josie there, but not Veronica? But then Veronica immediately meets up with Josie at Pop's afterwards. So does Veronica know this dinner's happening and she's not invited?
I hadn't thought until this moment that maybe Veronica is like, no way I'm going to this.
Well, she could have said no, or it could have been that her mom was like, oh, you're not coming because you don't support this.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's a...
Does she even know about the dinner party? And does she know that's where Josie was?
Right. Yeah. Instead, the focus is just on the betrayal that happens afterwards. Like the actual contract and stuff itself and the dinner party doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, yeah. Doesn't really cohere that way.
And then the Coopers are the real villains of this narrative and the monsters. They locked up their pregnant daughter because she's pregnant with a boy they don't like.
Yep. And Alice is out here saying her husband is too weak to go kill a teenager because they think that he just destroyed their daughter somehow. Wild. And the way they always talk about like Polly and locking her up and lying to their different daughters about things. Whew.
And that's what, so then I think like the fake kind of like monsters in this is like, the Coopers told Polly that Betty didn't want to see her. And you know what I mean? Vice versa. So it's like they know that they're not actually like the monsters and they both refuse to believe that about each other. Like they both refuse to believe the lies. Like, so it shows like the closeness of their relationship. And even when you have Betty, like at the beginning of the episode, asking Polly if she can stay with her or whatever, because she's scared. Like it's very much like their relationship and Betty's love for Polly and Polly's knowledge of Betty's love for Polly. Like Polly knows that Betty does not want to see her. And Polly knows that Betty is going to try to help her.
Yeah. And I hadn't even thought about it until now that it's their parents were driving a wedge between them from a young age. Wild.
The other, like another like fake monster is like Jason. Like the Coopers love to treat Jason like he's a monster. Like Jason is the problem. Jason was bad.
Right.
This bad guy. And I'm like, this 17-year-old boy. I mean, trust me, when I was 17, did I think that 17-year-old boys were monsters? Yes, and I stand by that. Those boys were. But that does not mean that as an adult, I look at a 17-year-old and I go, that's a monster.
Right.
Like there's a weird thing there that I'm like, you have to either like you got to deal with this.
They're kind of playing with Jason's reputation and who he actually is, like with that, like, because we don't really know. It's not the same as in Twin Peaks being a good reference for this with like Laura Palmer. Like you get a lot of details over that first season and episodes of exactly in how deep Laura was, how she treated other people, even though people were like she was an angel, but then also the people that were like were like doing drugs with us and partying. And we're kind of getting that with Jason here, where Cheryl has to reckon with that he was part of the jocks and like extreme, like misogynistic to the girls at school, but also like really supposedly had deep feelings for Polly, according to Polly. And then but also there's this like weird tenor of that he was potentially selling and running drugs that we hear from like his friends and that they like found in the car. So like, what's up with that?
I think the other like fake monster is Josie DeVal, because she's just like a shadow of how her father treats her. So it's like, oh, Val's like, oh, she's being so awful. And she is. There's no excuse for Josie's behavior. But where it comes from. And once Val understands that Josie is no longer a monster, she's still her friend and she's going through a hard time. And I think like it really shows like perspective is super important in relationships. And I think they do a really good job on this in the show. There's also like a lot of decisions that are made on this show that are necessarily like good or bad that then have like the inverse repercussions. Like Hermione signing Veronica's name now means that there are more jobs for Fred's company and Fred's company doesn't close. It positively impacts Archie's life and Jughead's life because then he rehires FP. Like this is in the next episode, but there's lots to it. Like there's a really positive knock-on effect to Hermione signing Veronica's name.
That's true.
I just think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way.
And it's painted as a negative, but it's not. There's a lot of nuance to this show that like I didn't really think about the first time we watched it.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, that it can be interpersonally like a betrayal, but has all these like positive benefits.
I also think like the other like kind of like faux monster in this is Archie to Veronica. Do I think Archie is a turd in this episode? Yes. When she
Yes.
calls him Ginger Judas, did I die? Yes.
Yes.
I loved it. But she's mad at him because their parents were making out. She's not actually mad at him for other things. And then she's mad at him for not having initially.
Mhm.
And then she's mad at him for not having a backbone, which I support. And I
Yeah.
do wonder is
And not thinking of her.
well, and so from the very beginning, when Fred talks to Archie at the beginning, he's like, you can do music, you can do football, but you have to own your decision. And Archie still hasn't learned that lesson.
No.
And it seems like we're getting this because in the next episode, we'll talk about Betty and Jughead. And it seems like Archie still isn't owning his decision of like, well, I can't be with Betty. So then it seems like he's uncomfortable with the idea of Jughead being with Betty.
Mhm.
So it's Archie never makes a decision and sticks with it.
Mm.
Or like can't quite like stay in it.
Mm-mm.
And he doesn't, I don't know if it's saying he doesn't trust himself or he's not vulnerable enough to be checking in with himself, but I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to do this talent show. Oh, no, wait, I'm so scared I can't do it, which is valid.
Yeah.
Stage fright is a thing. Like, I respect that. And then it's like, well, okay, I have to do this thing with someone. No, now I have to do this thing on my own. And like, granted, some of those are correct, but it's Archie cannot get there without like being wishy-washy as hell.
Yeah. It's all about him learning how to treat people while balancing what he wants to accomplish.
And he doesn't like necessarily like seem like he understands what he wants or how to accomplish it.
Yeah, not yet.
So my question for you on this episode is, how did no one ever find that car with the money?
It's kind of, it's
just
out
hidden?
it's out nowhere. Maybe only the two of them knew about it. But then someone's watching, so someone else knew about it.
Mhm.
So that is funny.
I think I know who was watching. I think I remember.
Yeah, I think I do too.
Well, those are my thoughts on this episode.
All right.
Do you have
Yeah, I don't
anything you
have
want to
any-
add?
Nope, nothing else for this one. So we
Well.
can move on to the next.
Let's do it.
All right. Chapter 7, In a Lonely Place. So this is actually the last episode of Ross Butler as Reggie.
Okay.
So wave goodbye to Ross. You'll be seeing a new Reggie in season 2. Thank you for your time on the show. All right. Jughead envisions him having dinner at the Coopers as everyone is made up like it's like at the 50s. Also, this is like classic Archie comics like costumes. Like that's kind of the vibe here.
Do you know what the S on Jughead's sweater stands for?
No.
I don't either. That wasn't like a trivia. That was like a.
My head always goes salt. But I have no idea what it actually is.
And Peppa.
Exactly. He looks over and sees his dad sitting on a lounger watching TV. Archie comes over and asks why he stabbed him in the back and has a knife in his back. Jughead wakes up and we see he's sleeping in a closet under the school stairs. He showers and turns around to find Archie there, who asks why he's there. Jughead shows Archie where he's been sleeping and that his dad hasn't had a job since he was fired. His mom and Jellybean both left. Or his mom took Jellybean, his younger sister, and left. Archie tells him to live with him, and Jughead says, don't tell anyone, like, no, I'll be okay, and don't tell anyone about this, including Betty. And Archie's like, why Betty? Veronica went shopping, and Hermione is angry because they don't have much money anymore, and Veronica throws her and her being with Fred back in her face. This is also where we get that she shopped at glamazon.com. Betty tells the friends about Polly and the car being torched. Archie and Veronica notice Jughead putting his hand on her shoulder. They both literally pause and stare at him, both Archie and Veronica. Kevin says they can talk to his dad about this. Jughead says no, he answers to the Blossoms. We see a girl texting in the background what they're talking about. This doesn't come back up again, does it?
No, it just goes blurry. Oh, no, wait. You know what it is?
What?
Wait, because they're talking about Polly,
They were talking about the car and
Yeah.
Polly.
who then tweets out about Polly.
Cheryl.
They're telling Cheryl.
That's what it is. Because it's like not a named character. It's just like a girl in the background.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Afterwards, Archie asks if Jughead and Veronica, or sorry, not Jughead and Veronica, Jughead and Betty are a thing. And he's like, it's okay if you guys are. Fred is also going to offer FP a position at his company again. Veronica asks if Betty and Jughead are a thing, and Betty talks to her about him being there for her, and Veronica approves. She also calls him Riverdale's Holden Caulfield. So, I don't know. You know what I mean? Okay, so I had this thought the other day. They talk about how much Jughead is like bullied and like hated by people, and we don't really see it.
That's not
Unlike in
true.
Pretty Little Liars, you see Reggie.
Reggie shoulder checks him once.
Yeah, and then also
Calls
is
him,
going
yeah.
to beat him up in the thing, in the student lounge.
Mm-hmm.
But then we don't get the same level as like Pretty Little Liars when Toby's introduced and kids are literally running away from him on the street.
Or the way they treat oh God, what's his name? That Hannah lives in his apartment at the end.
Lucas.
Mm-hmm. So the S on Jughead's sweater, sorry, I googled this. Could be an illusion. They never explicitly state. So in the show, people are like, oh, maybe it refers to Southside or like serpents, like because it's dad.
I could see that.
But in the because the creator stated that Jughead was a character he imagined, unlike other characters in the series that were based off people he knew. And so his widow stated that a friend of his named Skinny Lineham supposedly had some of Jughead's particular traits, and that the S insignia referred to an area called Skunk Hill, which in Montana turned into Squirrel Hill. I don't know. It's like this whole thing. It's on the Wikipedia, but so it could be a location based on the people.
Could be for Skinny.
Could be for Skinny.
The 40s were such a different time.
It was a different time.
Oh, that's my friend Skinny.
Oh, Skinny over there.
Yeah, Skinny Lineham. That boy's not right. He needs to eat more. So thank you for looking that up, though. That's actually interesting.
But so it's not very helpful.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know. But you can... Why do you think the S? What do you think the S stands for? I'm going with Southside for the show, you know?
Yeah. Or Skunk Hill. Sheriff Keller meets with Penelope Blossom to tell her about the break in the case. Cheryl approaches around the corner and is like, I have information, but to tell you, I want my vixens back. And her mom's like, fine, yes. She tells them Polly escaped the night before, and she tweeted out to her followers that Polly killed her brother and for people to go after her. I think it said #pitchfork.
Sharpen your pitchforks.
There you go.
Sharpen your pitchforks. That was I wrote it down because I said, wow, she's back. And you know what was wrong with the last episode? There was no fucking Cheryl Blossom.
Mm-hmm.
We needed a redheaded girly. We needed a red lip, and we need a brooch.
Absolutely.
We need a broad and a brooch.
That's right. We sorely missed her.
I say into my martini. Like,
potential episode title? We'll see. Jughead goes to visit his dad's trailer at Sunnyside Trailer Park. He finds his dad day drinking. Jughead asks about going to work with Fred, and FP said he got the call, but he said no because, like, what kind of man would he be if he went crawling back? He tells Jughead his mom gave up on them. Jughead pleads, and FP gets angry. Jughead says, if you get a job, I can come home. Jughead and Betty get a search party together for Polly. Archie apologizes for not being there for Betty, but she says, it's okay, you're here now. Veronica tells Kevin that her mom needs to make the next move, and because of her betrayal against her, what Veronica has done in the past is she just like goes out and parties. So she needs to go do this. So she's going to go on a bender, and she needs to get the perfect crew together to do this. And she decides Kevin, Josie, and Reggie are the crew to do this with. Okay. Kevin asks if
she needs a cool girl, she needs a gay, and she needs a dumb arm candy.
Yeah, so it works. Kevin asks if they should invite Betty. I just love that. Great friend. I don't know. What if we invited Betty?
She's got a lot going on. Should we bring her with us?
Veronica notices across the way the Blossoms have a search party complete with a hound. The two parties have a confrontation, and the Blossom and Coopers get into a standoff. Betty tries to talk Alice down from doing something. We don't really know what yet. We see that the Coopers are actually holding a news conference at a church to say that Polly is not dangerous and was in care when Jason was murdered, and she's pregnant with Jason's baby. The Blossoms are shocked by this news.
My favorite thing, sorry, about the search party is that Alice is carrying her purse. It's not over her shoulder. Alice is hand carrying her purse while they are walking around the woods.
God bless Alice. Also,
and the Blossoms show up fully fitted out for this search party. They have their hunting hounds. They look like they're going to ride. It's amazing. I'm like, oh, I want to be a Blossom so bad.
Oh, God. And what snakes the Coopers are, that they're like, we are going to hold this press conference outside of this church.
Yes.
It's not mentioned, but it's just like, we're so devout. Jughead and Betty walk in the rain together. Jughead stumbles around asking if they're dating. Betty blames herself for Polly running away, and Jughead says she did the right thing telling her the truth about Jason. Betty remembers when Polly was 9 running away, which then gives her an idea. She comes home to her empty house and goes up to the attic and finds Polly there asking for help. Could you bring me up from some of those chicken fingers, George Michael? Betty stitches her leg.
There's Pop in the attic. You've never seen Arrested Development. I mean, maybe don't. Like, some of the people in it aren't very good people, but
No.
it is a hilarious television show.
It's really funny. Betty remembers there's an extended storyline where someone's hiding out in the attic. Betty remembers Polly running. Oh, wait, I already did this. Betty stitches up her leg. Polly says she couldn't stay at home and wants to go to the farm upstate her and Jason were going to go to raise the baby. Sounds like they were being put down. The Coopers want to force her to. Sorry if that's spoiled. That's never mind. The Coopers want to
force. What do you mean?
Dude, it's nothing. It's nothing. Going to the farm upstate. That's where they go. All the senior dogs. The Coopers want to force her to put the baby up for adoption. As the parents come home, Betty pleads with her to stay put while she finds a place for her to stay. FP goes to see Fred. He opens up to Fred, who offers to make it work for him. Hermione comes in and Fred introduces them. Fred walks away to take a call. Hermione asks if this is a shakedown, and FP's like, no, your husband's settled up, and I'm trying to go straight, so don't mess this up for me. Betty asks her parents if they find Polly, if she can live with them. And they're like, yes, of course. And then she asks about the baby, and Alice is like, well, she agreed to put the baby up for adoption. Betty vents to Veronica. Veronica offers to talk to her mom about, to have a safe place for Polly. Cheryl then approaches and talks to Betty alone. She says she wants the baby to be safe, but Betty doesn't trust her. Cheryl still doesn't like Polly, but wants to save Jason's baby. She immediately susses out that Betty is lying about not knowing where Polly is. Betty says she needs money, and Cheryl's like, well, I can talk to my parents about that. Now that we're all on the same side, they'll want to protect Jason's baby too. FP finishes up his first day. As the boys greet them, the four of them all go to Pop's for dinner. FP and Fred swap high school stories. Seems like they were really good friends, even in a band together. Jughead diverts them away from asking about him. FP gets angry when Fred tries to pay for dinner and literally stops Pop from taking away the check. Veronica goes out clubbing, and her mom is mad. Hermione asks what she wants, and Veronica wants her to come clean and grills her about breaking the law. Hermione says that she'll tell Hiram about this, and Veronica's like, oh, right now? And Veronica says no, so Veronica leaves. Veronica and her crew have a big night out at the club. They take a break from the dance floor, and Kevin asks if any of this is actually helping. Veronica complains about the cops taking all their stuff and vents about her mom using her, and that when her dad went to jail, they lost everything that was her life. But her mom had told her that the thing that they could always hold on to was their name, and her mom took that away from her. FP jams with Archie. He goes to have a beer, but Jughead's like, maybe not have one. And FP's like, yeah, good idea. FP goes to leave, and Archie asks why FP said his dad owes him at dinner. FP and Fred apparently started Andrew's construction together. FP took odd jobs to provide for the family because he didn't, their construction company wasn't bringing in enough and got in trouble. Fred bailed him out, and Fred says they should go their separate ways from the company, and that he said that the bail money was him buying him out, even though FP thinks it was worth way more. He grabs his flask and starts drinking. Betty meets with the Blossoms at Pop's. They want to support Polly, and Penelope asks where she is now. And Betty's like, well, I don't want to say yet. Penelope says, well, you and Polly are part of the family now, and we'll protect you. You just have to trust us. Archie and Jughead talk about their dad's shared past, and Archie thinks his dad must have had a reason for cutting FP out. A bartender at the club reports that Veronica's card has been marked as stolen. Veronica's like, now my mom's ready to talk. And she pays off the guy with cash and goes to leave to talk to her mom. FP offers Jughead the bed at the trailer. He tells him about their... Jughead starts telling FP about their mom and Jellybean and their lives, but he turns around and finds that his dad is completely passed out. Fred talks to Archie, and Archie asks about cutting FP out of the company. Fred says FP was doing all sorts of illegal things and stealing from the company, and he bailed him out multiple times and eventually just had to cut him off because, you can't keep someone when they're drowning like that without them taking you down too. And Archie's like, well, and who cares if Jughead ended up drowning too? Veronica comes home, and Hermione says they'll settle it with a negotiation. She asks Veronica for her patience and wants her to keep it a secret, her relationship with Fred a secret from Hiram while she figures out what her relationship is. Okay. Veronica says, deal, but you can't have Fred over here, and you have to tell my dad all about forging my signature. Hermione agrees. This is where also we find out that Veronica's card was an American Excess. Very good.
Yeah, her American Excess card.
Jughead comes to school and finds Sheriff Keller and the principal in the blue and gold room, staring at their murder board. He gets escorted out by them, and Jughead tells Betty and Archie to call his dad. At the police station, Sheriff Keller says he found Jughead and Betty's prints on the car, which he says checks out, but was surprised to find his prints on a file from a case 6 years ago. Apparently, Jughead attempted to burn down Riverdale Elementary, but Jughead said he was just playing with matches. Keller says his file shows that he was bullied by the football team a lot, including Jason, and asks where he was on July 11th. Jughead says he won't talk and wants to talk to a lawyer. Penelope asked Cheryl if she saw Polly take drugs, and Cheryl's like, no, why? Penelope's like, I just want to know if, like, we want some an unfit parent raising our grandchild. Betty visits Jughead. He's worried he'll become a scapegoat for the police, and Betty says they'll get him out. Jughead asks if his dad is there, but he isn't. Fred and Archie are. Fred tells Sheriff Keller that Jughead was working for him on July 11th and can offer documentation. They leave the station and FP comes in saying his phone was dead. Jughead says nothing happened, it's all fine because Fred helped. FP's like, I'm going to go talk to that Sheriff Keller, and goes just inside to yell at him. Fred tries to stop him, but he yells that Jughead is his son. And Jughead eventually stops his dad and tells him not to make things worse. FP goes to leave and asks if Jughead's coming with him. Archie's like, well, he can stay with us. And FP asks if that's what Jughead wants. And then is like, well, maybe it's for the best, but Jughead says he'll go with him. And then FP stops, looks him in the eyes, and says he'll do what I'll do what you want. I'll get my act together, but I'm gonna need some time, maybe a month or two. And then hugs him and walks away. Hermione and Veronica wait for a call from Hiram. Fred forges time cards for Jughead and tells Archie he maybe should have given FP another chance back in the day. Polly waits with Betty, Archie, and Veronica at Pops for the Blossoms. Cheryl comes in. Polly apologizes to her for Jason. Cheryl tells Polly to leave now, and she thinks that her parents don't want to help her. Veronica offers to help, and we cut to Hermione allowing Polly to stay with them. Archie makes up Jughead a bedroll in his room, and Jughead says he won't give up on his dad yet. And we see FP stumbling in his trailer, and we see Jason's Letterman jacket hung up in his closet. The end.
I love it. Okay. So on this one, I feel like the theme I got was doing what you want versus doing what's right. And I think the most fun example is Cheryl. Because Cheryl immediately is like, oh, sharpen your pitchforks, girlies.
We're going to get her.
She's doing what she wants. She's like, we're going to get Polly. Mm-hmm. And then she finds out about the baby. And Cheryl...
Did Cheryl not already know about the baby? Not yet.
No, Cheryl did not know about the baby.
Because that was only Betty and Jughead had figured it out, right?
Betty and Jughead just learned in the last episode.
That's what it was. Okay.
So for Cheryl to then be like, oh, a piece of Jason exists. Mm-hmm. And I want to protect that, but I do not want to betray the person Jason loved. And I think that's really important because obviously Mama Blossom Penelope is trying to get to claim that Polly'd be an unfit mother and get access to the baby.
She's asking for evidence that she was doing drugs.
Exactly, because she wants to be able to prove that she should get to have those babies and get to raise them, or baby. And so I really like that Cheryl kind of is like that would benefit Cheryl. She would get to have those, she'd get to have the baby. That's her family now. She gets to have a piece of Jason back, but she does not do that to Polly. And she decides not to do that to Polly before Polly even says anything to her. Yeah. Because Polly does her oh, I know how much Jason loved you, after Cheryl's already shown up by herself being like, you have to get out of here. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that's really important it shows that kind of in Pretty Little Liars Original Sin, the children are so much better than their parents, Fred notwithstanding. Oh, yeah. Fred notwithstanding.
So two thoughts quickly on Fred, just how good Luke Perry is.
I've got a whole thing on Fred we can get into too.
Okay, just a quick aside. I was listening to Shelved by Genre. It's a great podcast that you listen to if you want to listen to people talk about genre fiction books, and then also on in between, because they'll do it on specific series. So they did one on Earthsea, they did one on the Last Child Mage trilogy, and then in between each of those sections they'll do a Hallmark movie. And so they did one that had Luke Perry. And so one of the hosts there, Cameron Kunzelman, described Luke Perry. It's like, have you ever like looked at a grown man and just wanted to cry? I'm like, that is Luke Perry. So it was just funny that we had just talked about, I had listened to it after we had recorded the episode where we were just talking up Luke Perry so much. So I was like, this is really funny companion piece.
That's so funny.
But then on to Cheryl, I think it's great character growth for her of being like, oh my God, I need to do what's right, exactly like you're saying here. And I can't these babies are not fit to be raised by the people that raised me and Jason.
Yes, like the baby is not yeah, Penelope doesn't get a second chance at raising children. She did so bad the first time.
And it's like, oh, this isn't going to be a new slate with the grandchild. This is going to be the exact same thing because she's already conniving and trying to like drive a wedge there.
I think the other two people who are doing it's like the what they want versus like what they should is like, you could probably argue Hermione in this too, but I'm not really going to. But FP and Fred in different ways. Like I think FP wants Jughead home. He wants all of that, but he also doesn't want to. He doesn't want to or can't change because alcoholism is a disease. And so in the end, he wants to take Jughead home with him. He's like, okay, come home with me, but he knows that that's not right, so he has to do what he doesn't want and let Jughead go live with Archie and Fred so that he can try to get himself together. And I think that's really powerful because the whole basically from the time we meet FP to now, it's like FP has always been this like kind of like this weight on Jughead and this issue for Jughead. And so for him to be like, you know what, like I recognize that this is a problem.
Yeah. And I mean, when we first meet him, he's the like
the scary guy with the motorcycle.
The seedy member. And there's a lot of, I mean, his life is like an absolute mess at this point, right? He's Jughead finds him. The trailer's just completely torn apart, filled with trash and bottles and food, and he's just drinking in the middle of the day. And throughout the episode, you get this, like, that he can't quite, that he, again, to your point, that he's not ready yet to be able to move on, to be able to, like, fully take in Jughead because of the way he acts, especially around Fred and things. They have like a nice time at dinner, but you see the knife edge as he tilts over into the like angry and aggressive, like stopping Pop like from leaving back. And also the way, this will come back around actually, but that he can't quite control, or then showing up late to the police station, he can't be there for Jughead yet. So it's handled really well, and Jughead being like, oh my God, this is the chance, and he starts to tell him about like, because he's so excited to tell him about what their family's up to because he misses them, but then FP's passed out.
Whereas then Fred kind of does the opposite. He does what's not right, in air quotes, by lying for Jughead to protect Jughead. So I just think it's a really interesting dichotomy. I also think like the thing with FP and Fred, like I feel like I could write a whole dissertation on like comparing and contrasting them and how they're each other's foils as parents. Like they're the two edges of masculinity. It's toxic and like super comfortable masculinity. And so FP is total toxic masculinity. He can't let Fred pay for him. He can't go back to the job because that would make him look bad. And like Jughead is the thing that is forcing him to reckon with how toxic that mentality is, and like that those are beliefs he's probably always held and had based on how he was raised and how he's lived his life and the lack of privileges he's been given, and how he chose to live through those kind of like, I guess, that worldview and make these choices, whereas Fred, who may have come from a very similar lack of privilege, did not make those same choices. And when Fred made these more comfortable, or like more like comfortable in his masculinity, comfortable in his whole life choices, he prevents himself from being in those situations. And I think it's also like a really good contrast of like the Fred feels guilty, whereas like FP feels shame. Like there's a huge guilt versus shame kind of dichotomy going on there. And I think it's funny because as the show goes on, I feel like it's kind of the inverse in Jughead and Archie, whereas like Archie will feel more shame and Jughead will feel more guilty for how things play out, especially like how the Betty relationship currently is being portrayed. it's like that Jughead feels kind of bad that he's not sure how to talk to Archie about it, and Archie feels kind of like shameful about how he's treated Betty, or how he feels about the relationship, or how uncomfortable it makes him. Like, we don't really know we can just tell there's discomfort.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of fun because you're like, oh, there. Obviously, Archie does not have a drinking problem, and there's like a lot more. It's a very different, narrative. But I was like, oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, of how it maps onto the sons from the fathers,
and how it kind of flips.
Yeah, there you go.
And how it doesn't necessarily, like, having a parent that is more adjusted will probably prevent Archie from going down the same road as FP, but that doesn't mean that it makes your kid perfect. And it doesn't. I also really love that Fred does not treat Jughead like a criminal, even though his father's stolen from him. He always treats Jughead like he's basically his son.
Right.
And he does not, and Jughead doesn't steal from them. Like, I think there's also like an important, like, Jughead doesn't, there's no reason to not trust Jughead, and so therefore Fred trusts Jughead.
And had offered them to essentially, we at least get it. We don't see a scene or thing, but we assumed that Archie had already talked to Fred about Jughead staying there.
Oh, yeah. That he told his dad after he found him under the staircase.
Yeah. And it's... Yeah, there's
that's what makes Fred, I think, feel so guilty. And also Archie makes a comment about it. Like, oh, well, like, but by you doing this to FP, you send Jughead down the drain too. And it's like, can you save the son even if you can't save the father?
Right. And because you understand...
And I understand why Fred can't, you know what I mean? Like, alcoholism is really hard, and it's really hard on the people. Addiction in general is really hard on, obviously, the addict, but also the people around them. And so it's really hard on Fred, and this is someone he loves and cares about. And so, it's a really good, I feel like it's a fairly nuanced perspective. Like, it's not just like, oh, he's a drinker and therefore FP is bad.
Right. There's a lot of, even though FP is not put in a good light at all in this episode.
Really.
Yeah, pretty much. You understand that he is in crisis. Like, you understand that he's lost in this, and that it wasn't always this way, but that he made decisions that were underhanded that kind of left him this way, and that he's trapped again, like you mentioned, from toxic masculinity of I can't provide.
I also really enjoy that Jughead is dealing with this while also dealing with the very high school aspect of, like, what are Betty and I? And also I don't want to push it because she's going through so much. And he's got a lot of emotional intelligence just based on his childhood and his life. And I think, and also his love for literature. I assume that's kind of how you can excuse that character to have the kind of knowledge of the world that he has. But it's very funny because you're like, his dad's an alcoholic. He has to live with his best friend. And also, like, are we dating?
Are we a thing?
Are we together?
Yeah.
Is this exclusive?
And I think it's great how they show Fred, because you understand why he would cut out FP.
Oh, yeah.
He's volatile. Fred said, he'd given him multiple chances. And he's not wrong in saying that someone who's drowning like that at a certain point you do have to...
They have to actually grab on to the life preserver if you're going to throw it out.
Exactly. So you can't be the person that saves them. And that at a certain point, it maybe makes sense to step away. But he also, what Archie brings there is just like, he had a family that was getting pulled under by this too. And Fred realizing that he could have been there for Jughead and wasn't because he cut him off. And how guilty he feels. By cutting off
FP, he hurt Jughead.
And he's like, yeah, I could have done this differently. And I think it's really good, the scenes between Fred and FP of like how uncomfortable Fred is around him, but is trying. I mean, he even says up front when they meet again, it's like, this is the boys' idea, but I'm willing to go along with it. And he doesn't even want to go with FP to dinner. He's kind of like, well, like he's about to offer an excuse before FP kind of overrides. And if I do want to say, just like shout out, Skeet Ulrich is just knocking it out of the park.
Oh yeah, he's so good.
So good.
The acting on this show is so good. Like, especially when you compare it to like early Pretty Little Liars. Even like the kids on this are all really talented. Like everyone, there's not a single person on this show that's acting that I'm looking at going, oh, that's not great.
Yeah, I think probably the difference is like early PLL is these people that like soaps. Like,
yes. No. It's a completely different.
It's the melodrama acting.
And it's not to say that they aren't all good. It's also that some of them, that was their, I mean, a lot of them on this, this was like their first big thing too. It's just, I think there's so much more adult talent on this show too, that I do wonder if part of it is like when you're in the presence of people who are really talented, do you have more examples to kind of learn from? Not saying the adults on the other show weren't talented, but they're not around.
Yeah.
The parents aren't really a part of the show.
No, not in the same way at all. They like start incorporating them as like plot lines and other things, but it's
not the same. But obviously we love Pretty Little Liars. That was not a dig. But sure. I just was like, oh wow, this is some. It's also a better script.
Yeah,
like it's easier to act, I assume, when your character is developed.
Exactly. Yeah, and I don't want to. There's definitely like some rough edges and some patches on PLL that we talked about.
Yeah.
If you go listen to those episodes of just like, yeah, maybe that wasn't the best.
That was acting. A choice. So,
but I did want to just, I think, draw the line of like, this is a little bit more, the vibe of like what they're kind of asked to do as actors, I think is different.
Yes, that's true. That's very true. The Blossoms versus the Coopers, 10 out of 10. Love.
Okay.
I love. I already talked about Alice's purse. I talked about the outfits, them walking to the field, that they have the sheriff with the Blossoms.
Mm-hmm. I love
but
that.
Kevin is with Betty.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this, not like family divided, because Sheriff Keller is not on the Blossom side, but he is like it's interesting that he's with them and not the people with the missing daughter.
Right. But it's because as Jughead calls out earlier, like the Coopers run the media, but the Blossoms run the town because the money runs the town.
I do love that.
And so that's why Hal has a huge chip on his shoulder, because he thinks he should be running the town.
Yes. I do love that. I didn't think about that line, but that's so good. Blossoms run the town.
It's really good, yeah.
So then Polly ends up going and living with the Lodges. I don't remember this at all.
Me neither. I was like,
this is like a large plot point. Zero. There is absolutely zero recall that this happened in my little head.
Because I don't remember it at all. I assume this is changed in 2 episodes, but I don't know.
I do think it's interesting. And Hermione makes a comment. She's like, anything for Alice Cooper's girls. And so you're like, oh, what are you up to?
That's true.
Girl, what are you up to?
That's really true.
Betty and Jughead. Jughead is trying to get answers. I kind of brought this up already, but he's trying to kind of figure out what they are. But he never forces Betty's hand. And I really like that. And I can't decide if it's because Betty isn't sure or Betty is literally not even like focused on it.
Right. That she's just preoccupied with other things.
Because when Veronica asks her about it and she's like, oh, he was really there for me and he's been really nice to me, and she's very comfortable with it. Like when he puts his arm around her and she grabs his hand, like she's actively participating. Yeah. It is not like Betty is not interested and Jughead's trying, you know what I mean? Like there's a very obvious physical comfort between the two of them, which I think is really helpful when you're like watching the show and you're like, okay, so this is not like some like, oh, Jughead's got a crush, but she's not going to reciprocate kind of situation. It's just like Betty's busy. She's booked and busy.
she's got like bigger things to worry about right now,
which I kind of love. But then Archie is obviously uncomfortable.
Yes. Which is the seeds planted here of like, oh, I think it reads to me as even though he's not romantically interested in her, it's like she's my Betty.
That's my Betty.
So it's kind of like there's this claim of, oh, but now she's focused on someone else and she's their own person. So like, well, that's weird.
Well, and it plays into Archie's like wishy-washiness that I was talking about in the last episode, how he makes a decision but then doesn't really like the repercussions of the decision, so then he changes the decision, and so as you're just like, oh, Archie.
Yeah. And then also, even though hasn't been keeping close tabs on him, they're both his friends, so it's like, wait, his guys
2
are now
best friends
dating?
Are now connected without him,
and I didn't know about this. Yeah.
Well, and like he was the connection point and now he's been removed, so it's decentered Archie,
right?
And how does Archie feel when he's been decentered?
Yeah. And I also think too, because literally every other girl is interested in him, because he's the hot guy. It made me think there's this quote being shared around. I can't remember.
But he's like newly the hot guy. Like he got hot over summer.
That's true. But big in his britches there. That there's this quote from The Graduate where Robert Redford wanted the part that God, whatever the actor is for the main part in that.
Okay. I don't know.
Do you remember his name?
No.
It starts with a D. I'll have to come back around for it. But I can't remember if it was Mike Nichols or who was like, he couldn't play the part. Like, he couldn't be a loser. And then, so Robert Redford's talking to him about it, and he's like, you can't play a loser. He's like, I can play a loser. And it's just like, well, okay, like, how many times have you ever been, like, rejected by a girl? And he's just like, what are you talking about? And it's like, and he was sincere.
Oh my God.
So that's what it made me think of, right? Like, well, what do you mean?
Archie's like, you could reject me?
Right.
It's that when Archie's, I'm not good enough for you.
Mm-hmm.
So is Jughead good enough for her?
Seems like it.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to say about Jughead being the scapegoat is
Dustin Hoffman. Sorry.
Okay.
Also a problem.
But Jughead being the scapegoat for this whole thing, they're like, you played with matches as a 6-year-old. You're like, what the actual fuck?
The Sheriff Keller's building this like case against him of like, you were a loner trying to strike back, like this nerd, this angry nerd.
Meanwhile, he's like hanging out with his son's best friend.
I know. He's hanging out with like the best kids in Riverdale.
Yeah, literally. Including his son.
Yeah. And then Jughead makes a reference to the oh God, it's the kids they arrested for listening to metal music that they said were doing satanic rituals.
Yes. Yeah. I just think it's so funny and strange. But where was Jughead that day?
It is interesting. What was he doing? Why doesn't he have an alibi?
I mean, do you have an alibi for July 11th?
I'd be like, I don't know. I truly don't know.
What day of the week was that?
I mean, maybe we can check at work if I had emails that day. Probably. Was it a weekend? Was it a weekday?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Why are we going after the poor kid?
Why are we going after the poor kid? The kid whose father's an alcoholic?
Sheriff Keller.
That's really all I have for this episode. Did you have anything you want to add?
No, I think we kind of covered it all. So I think that does it for our first episode of 2025.
Wow.
I know. You can find us on all your audio podcast platforms at Dead Ends. You can also find the video version where you can see us at dead_ends on YouTube. We appreciate all the likes, comments, subscribes, all that sort of thing. It helps the algorithm, I believe, and us, get more listeners and all that stuff. But
and it boosts our ego.
Yes, it does. And we like talking to people in the comments. So leave a comment on anything that we talk about here or any of the TV shows that we don't know anything about.
Oh, yes, please. If you know things about these, please tell us.
Mm-hmm. Dark Angel and When Tells the Heart.
And tell us if we should watch them.
Yes.
But if it's When Tells the Heart, be real. That's a lot of episodes. So you got to be real honest.
Totally. Dark Angel is even, because it's when it came out, it's only 2 seasons, but it's like 50 episodes.
Oh, we love a 25 episode season.
Yeah, boy. Would that be something that we should do on here? I don't know if it's a mystery, though. Let us know. It kind of sounds like it, but I don't know. Might be one of those weird curios that'd be fun to do.
We should ask my father because he probably watched it.
We would know about it.
We'll call him right after this.
Yeah. Should we play the video game? Anyways, but yeah, then we also have an email where you can send your questions to at deadendspcast@gmail.com. If it's good questions and things, we can read it on air or maybe save it for a question episode. Who knows?
Not us.
And you can also follow us on Blue Sky at Dead Ends Podcast, I believe is the full handle. I am going to double check. It's new to me.
Did you add it to our link tree?
Yes, it's in our link tree on there.
Okay.
dead-ends.bluesky.bisky. And post updates there, post tweets when the episode goes live, screen caps from the show when we're like, this looks really cool. Look at this. Cheryl wearing a
mostly
red robe.
Cheryl.
Yeah, pretty much. Wearing a red robe and a candle walking in this gothic castle. And
my
other
dream.
things there. Yeah. And you can also tweet at us, whatever it's called. I think it's called a skeet over on Blue Sky.
I only hope that's not true. Okay, well,
Oh wait, no, sorry.
we don't fit in.
We're not gonna fit in.
Okay, we love you.
Love you.